Welcome in, whiskey freaks, to the Blind Tasting Podcast, your number one attitudinal bourbon destination. I'm John Stark, your host, and I'll be bringing you all the whiskey news, opinions, and reviews fit for your consumption today here on the podcast. All right, whiskey freaks, listen up. Artificial intelligence, AI, they say it isn't just recommending videos of hot girls in bikinis in your social media feed anymore. It's actually plotting world domination. No joke, guys. Your fridge? It's keeping tabs on your snacking habits. Your smart speaker? Totally snitching on you to the feds. Your TV? It's actually watching you while you watch it. And your bourbon collection might be in on it. Yeah, no, Skynet is definitely not taking over. Well, just yet anyway. So grab a pour, sit back, relax, and get ready for bourbon, whiskey, and attitude only found here on the Blind Tasting Podcast. But fun fact, or maybe not so fun, and this is totally true, guys, no BS here. Skynet 5. Yeah, you heard me right. Skynet. It turns out it's not just a movie thing. It's not just about the Terminator, guys. The Brits, they actually have a real satellite system, and guess what they call it? They call it Skynet. And it's been up there circling the earth since 2003, and it's quietly handling, quote, British military communications. And probably watching basically everything. Totally fine though, guys. Definitely not self-aware. Definitely not planning anything terrible. Nothing to worry about. Right? All right, enough tomfoolery, guys. Let's get into the episode. Because today, I'm going to focus on nothing but bourbony goodness. Because I've got all kinds of things to throw your way. And we might just learn something while we're at it. I got a couple new releases to mention from our good friends at Calumet Farm and Woodford Reserve. I'm going to give you the lowdown, or maybe give you the recon on the 5th annual St. Louis Bourbon Festival that happened on October 3rd. I was fortunate enough to go, and I'm going to share it all with y'all here today. What booths did I visit? Did I talk to anybody cool? And would I even recommend going to this festival? So, was it any good? Well, you'll find out in just a few, so hang tight. And finally, today, I'm going to review Bulleit Straight Bourbon whiskey. So here's the deal. Calumet Farm just dropped a high-rye whiskey. And yes, it's 100 proof, and they say it's all kinds of bold. Now, this is their first rye release, and it's celebrating 100 years of the farm. I know I've talked about Calumet Farm before. I've done that review on the 16-year Calumet. You can go back and listen to it from last year. They've been around, I think, since, obviously now 1925. Anyway, this particular offering is 91% rye and 9% barley mash bill. And what does that mean for you, really? Well, they say you get subtle hints of caramel, baking spice, and warm oak with bolder punches of dark fruit and pepper. There's no age statement here, which that always irritates me, but nevertheless, it is what it is. This bottle here, this rye from Calumet Farm, will run you $88.99 on their website. I have yet to see it in stores near me. I've been looking for it. And personally, until I learn more about it, I'm not spending nearly $100 on anything. That's just me. You do you. Woodford Reserve. They just dropped their first ever barrel strength rye. Sounds like ryes are coming out of the woodwork, so to speak. And we're talking here about 125.1 proof, pre-prohibition style, 53% rye mash bill. That's the same as their regular rye, just way, way stronger. Master distiller Elizabeth McCall, she says it's got spice and tobacco up front. It's layered with fruit, floral, and a hint of sweetness. And it's basically everything you like about Woodford rye, but more. It's not the standard 90.4 proof here, kids. And again, that one, don't get me started on that. They say this one hits harder, and thank God for that. I'm going to try to get my hands on that and review that here on the pod in the next little bit. This one is a limited edition. God help us, it's a limited edition. It's $129.99, and naturally because it's Woodford, a 700 milliliter bottle. They say it's available nationwide and at the Woodford Reserve Distillery. Online shipping is a thing too, but it's only in a handful of states. So if you live somewhere else, you're probably going to have to make a road trip or bribe a liquor store owner. So, like I mentioned on the opening of the podcast, I was fortunate enough, and I mean fortunate enough, because as a member of the media, I got complimentary media passes to the festival, the St. Louis Bourbon Festival, and it was held back on October 3rd here in, well, St. Louis. And before I get into all of that, I want to mention something to you. Yeah, you guessed it, my new book. Yeah, Whiskey Freaks, I am proud of it, and also I would like to sell it, because this podcast, it ain't free. So, I wrote a book. Whiskey Wisdom and Bourbon BS, Barrel Strength Legends, Lies, and Untold Tales. You can get it on Amazon right now, all day, every day. Turns out, except for yesterday when Amazon crashed. But anyway, most days it's available 24 hours a day. And inside this book, you'll find dozens of wild, historical, maybe true, probably ridiculous whiskey stories about outlaw distillers, shady marketing schemes, whiskey-fueled inventions, folklore, and a ton of facts about whiskey. These facts are so weird it might just make your head spin, or at least maybe make you laugh. Anyway, each chapter ends with one simple question: whiskey wisdom or BS? You're going to be the judge. It's best enjoyed with a pour you're about to keep or collect. It's cheap, it's fun, it's full of chaos, just like the podcast, right? It's only $10 on Kindle over at Amazon.com. And if you don't have a Kindle, that's no problem. Use the free Kindle app on any phone, device, laptop. You can read it on your computer at Amazon.com, just like you would read anything else on your computer. So grab a copy, pour yourself something good, maybe light a cigar, have a few laughs, and like I always say, you might just learn something. That's Whiskey Wisdom and Bourbon BS, Barrel Strength, Legends, Lies, and Untold Tales. The link's in the show notes. Also, you can just simply go to Google or Amazon and type that in. I thank you guys for listening as always, and hope that you'll pick up a copy. So I want to give you a little bit of background on the St. Louis Bourbon Festival. And just because you're in a different city or a different country listening, which, by the way, we are in a multitude of countries and all 50 states, some of you have maybe never been or been able to get to a bourbon festival. And I've talked about some of this stuff that they have in Louisville and other places. You damn near have to be a hedge fund manager to be able to afford some of these festivals. So you may not have been able to get to one, may not have been able to afford one. So I'm going to kind of give you a primer on what it is, and specifically here to the St. Louis Bourbon Festival, what they do, and then share my experience as a member of the media at this event that took place, and I think I mentioned before, on October 3rd. So it was just not too many days ago. So the St. Louis Bourbon Festival, it's hosted by the St. Louis Bourbon Society, and they've got thousands and thousands of people in this group, the St. Louis Bourbon Society. They host it every year, and in addition to being a fantastic bourbon event, a portion of every ticket, and this is what's really extra special about this, a portion of every ticket supports an organization named Code 3 Response. And Code 3 Response, it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and their mission is to provide financial assistance to first responders who've been critically injured in the line of duty or suffered catastrophic life events. So it's a fantastic cause. Now, the 2025 event, it spanned 4 city blocks along Cherokee Street in St. Louis, and it featured beautiful historic buildings, converted spaces used as tasting lounges and VIP areas, and it's basically right there on the historic spot of the Lemp Mansion and Brewery here in St. Louis. And it's known for maybe being haunted. Maybe, I don't know. Now, it was really a perfect space for hosting this event. Minus the whole being in downtown St. Louis thing, that's another story. And I say that because some folks just simply will not go to the city for any reason. It turns out that really didn't matter. They had a tremendous outpouring of support, and a huge number of people attended this event. Lots of bourbon enthusiasts, lots of whiskey freaks showed up to this. So there was live music, they had street performers, they had a bunch of food trucks, they had 2 cigar patios if you're into cigars. And that's not the best part. The best part? Sampling hundreds of whiskeys from around the world. Now, the festival takes place once a year, like I mentioned, this being the 5th year. And its goal is highlighting bourbon and community. Folks getting together and enjoying whiskey together. So, The wife and I, we got down to St. Louis quite a bit early. We decided we'd eat at McGurk's Irish Pub. It's about a mile away from the Lemp Mansion and the Lemp Brewery where the event was held. So we did that for a couple of reasons. One, it's, like I said, just a mile or so away. And they've got good food, and they've got Zwickel beer from Urban Chestnut. If you ever get the opportunity to pick up a Zwickel. And so it was basically a win-win. And it was easy for us. We just Ubered to the event, so we didn't have to fight for parking. Well, story time. Turns out we didn't need to fight for parking as early as we were. There was plenty of it around the venue, but we had to live and learn. And we'll know for next year. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. This is one note to the event organizers, and maybe this is my bad, but our Uber dropped us off at the north, I think it was the north end of the north end of the complex. And rather than just letting us walk through, and I don't understand this, we were forced to walk completely around the entire Lemp complex, which for my wife was a lot of fun because she was wearing cute shoes naturally. This was not a pleasant experience. It was a little bit warm, and we had to walk all the way. We had to walk east, then we had to walk south, then we had to walk back west again, then we had to walk back, had to walk around the whole damn complex. That was unpleasant. It didn't have to happen that way. They could have had a way to funnel people through. I know that the organizers have done a fantastic job with this. This is the 5th year. I'm just saying for us, this was unpleasant. This was a very unpleasant way to start the St. Louis Bourbon Festival for us. So in the future, why not just let folks walk through rather than steering us all the way around the complex? We saw a lot of other folks doing the same thing. So there were a lot of people that had to go about doing this. And I think that could be done better. Just my opinion. Again, you're going to get my opinion here. That's what it's all about. So maybe more signage. That way our Uber driver would have gone somewhere different. Maybe loosen up the rules. Just let folks walk through. That, my friends, is my only complaint. And I wanted to get that out of the way right up front. So after checking in, we got our complimentary St. Louis Bourbon Society Glencairns. It came in handy because since not every tasting station had their own glasses. So we used the Glencairns and we just washed them out between tastings. They had water bottles that were available for free, so you could grab as many waters as you needed. And mind you, the St. Louis Bourbon Society had put together an amazing map and guide for the event that listed all the vendors, the companies, I guess that's the best way to describe it, which ones would be giving out samples at the event and so on. So I took some time. I took quite a bit of time. Okay. I've been to events before where the bourbon is free, and I know painfully that you can't sample everything. So I made a list to keep things under control, and I mostly stuck to that list. First up in the first tent that we went to was Lasso Motel Whiskey. Yeah, I'd never heard of it before either, and that's the biggest reason it made it onto my list of whiskeys to try. Lasso Motel Whiskey. It kind of makes you wonder, is this going to be an 80 proof trash? Kind of thinking like exchanging something behind a dumpster, behind some seedy motel in the bad part of town. I wanted to know what it was all about. Would these guys, could they have anything worthwhile? Well, it turns out they did. Met a dude named Tanner, and he was running their booth or table, whatever you want to call it. And he had a number of whiskeys for folks to try. And guys, I don't want to bore you today on the pod, but I mean, have you ever heard of something as crazy as motel whiskey? Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go more in depth for about 2 minutes on these cats because I'm a child of the 70s and I relate to their kind of vibe. It's like shag carpet and avocado colored appliances in your kitchen. It's that type of vibe, really. So here's what I know about Lasso Motel Whiskey. Oh, and then I'll tell you what I tasted and if it was garbage or if it was decent or whatever. So first, 2 minutes of history about Lasso Motel Whiskey. It's a Dallas-based brand, and it's produced and bottled by Dynasty Spirits, and that's a Texas company that managed several spirits labels from its Dallas facility. The brand was founded by Devin Odell, who drew inspiration from the Belmont Hotel, which is a well-known Dallas landmark built back in the 1940s. Now, the Belmont's history and connection to the city's creative scene, it helps shape the identity and name of the whiskey. The whiskey itself is sourced from multiple established distilleries, and depending on the expression, Lasso Motel Whiskey was stock either from Green River, Ross and Squibb, MGP, Barton 1792, and so on. And after sourcing, the whiskey is transported to Dynasty Spirits' Dallas facility, where it's blended, finished, and bottled. Now, the brand's portfolio, almost there, guys. The brand's portfolio includes straight bourbon as well as whiskeys that feature additional cask finishes influenced by various international styles. While the distillation does take place outside of Texas, all the blending and bottling, like I said, those operations do occur locally, given that the brand a clear connection to Texas and their home state. We know from Still Austin and a lot of the folks in Texas, they are proud to be Texans, and that is no exception here with Lasso Motel Whiskey. And here's the cool part to me, and it's their shtick, so to speak. The name Lasso Motel refers to like the vintage motel culture of mid-century Dallas, and it ties back to like I said, that Belmont Hotel's reputation. It was a stop for artists and travelers and musicians. God, they love that down in Texas, don't they? The concept connects the whiskey to a specific time and place rather than just a generic Western theme. So, Lasso places an emphasis on blending variety and maintaining transparency about its production origin. And that's where I bring in Tanner again, right? He was a super cool dude. And when they say transparent, they mean it. And he meant it. I didn't have to twist any arms to find out about the whiskey. He was right up front that their stuff is sourced. So what did I try from Lasso Motel Whiskey? Well, like I said, this Tanner dude, he was super enthusiastic for me to try because I went to each table or booth, and what I would usually start with was just some conversation. Then my question would typically be, if I only had time to try one thing from you, what would it be? And he offered me their 18-year-old whiskey, and I saw a bunch of other folks kind of gravitating to it too. So like a sheeple, I was like, sure, I'll try that, the 18-year-old. So Lasso Motel 18-year-old American whiskey. And like I said, Tanner was up front about all the deets. It's 18 years old. It's from Seagram's. Well, MGP now. I'm not going to go into all the history of the iterations of Seagram's and how those things changed hands. But we'll call it MGP distillate. This bad boy was 121 proof. And I'm not going to lie, right off the bat, and this is the first thing I tasted at the festival, 121 proof, it was hot. And it was probably hot for a couple of reasons. Like I said, it was warm outside. It was the first thing I tasted, and it's 121 proof. So that's probably why it was so hot, at least initially for me. And to be clear, this American whiskey is a light whiskey. Tanner was right up front about that. It was aged in used barrels, and the mash bill was 99% corn and 1% malted barley. It's very interesting. Now, first off, like I said, I got hot. After my mouth cooled down, I was able to get basically the tasting notes they kind of boast about, which were rich notes of new oak that kind of moved into this buttery toffee and sweet sugar maple thing. And the finish was kind of like a dried apricot deal. Pretty true to form, and as they advertise it, really. Now, overall, I give it good marks. The bad part is, if you can find it, you'll pay about $120 for it. And if you really, really need to have it, I think Sealbox has it for $250. So, yeah, I'm not going to be on my shelf anytime soon, but I did enjoy it, but not $250 worth of love for them over at Lasso Motel. They were intriguing to me, but they weren't that intriguing. They had a few other things I could have tasted, but like I said, I chose to go on to the next table on my list, which was the good folks from Missouri, R Farm Distillery. And that's the letter R, Farm Distillery. Now, they're from my home state of Missouri. Another reason I wanted to swing by and visit with these guys for a couple reasons. And there's always reasons, guys. One, it's my home state. I want to show them some love. And two, when we drive up to Nebraska, umpteen times a year, we drive right past these guys out in Mound City, Missouri. It's out kind of by Kansas City-ish. Not too far from Weston and from the good folks at Ben Holiday, actually. It's in the Missouri river bottoms there. There's lots of farmland. There's really nothing but farmland out there, and like a Casey's and another Casey's and a Dollar General. That's pretty much it. But so these guys they're just that. They are a farm family out in the farmland. I spoke with Lauren, and I spoke with the owner, and I tried a rye whiskey that they had. And the one thing about these guys, they're a young distillery. So this was a 3-year, 1-month-old rye barreled in a heavy toasted char 1 barrel, and bottled at 107.3 proof. And honestly, for a youngish rye, just 3 years old, it was great. It had deep flavors, all the things. And one cool thing I learned, we're going to learn something today, guys. I mentioned that, right? They used a Kelvin barrel. They told me they had a Kelvin barrel. Well, listen, I've always told you on this podcast, I am no expert, right? I'm learning as I go. And although Vlad thinks I'm arrogant, I am not arrogant. I am learning, and I want to share with you guys. So I wanted to learn what in the hell is a Kelvin barrel. I mean, all we ever hear about is Independence Stave, right? Well, turns out Kelvin is one of the coolest and kind of most old school barrel makers out there. Now, it all started way back in 1963 on the River Kelvin in Glasgow, Scotland. They were making barrels for distilleries all over Scotland and Ireland. Now, we fast forward to 1991. They packed up and they moved to Louisville, Kentucky, right in the heart of bourbon country. They wanted to be closer to the American oak and the distilleries that can't get enough of the barrels that they need. Today, Kelvin supplies new and used barrels to more than 80 distilleries around the world. And here's the part I love. They still do it the hard way. They don't use gas jets. There's no digital timers. They don't have robots on an assembly line. They actually toast and char their barrels over real wood fires. And when the cooper thinks it's done, it's because he can see it, he can smell it, and he can feel it. And that's how it's been done for generations. And I think that's amazing. So they've got stacks of air-dried oak. They've got barrels in every stage of the process and crews making each one like artwork. And on top of that, they run a massive used barrel business, shipping empty bourbon barrels off to places making rum, tequila, wine, and even beer. So in addition to the good folks at our farm being very cool, kind of opened up my eyes to something just as cool. Kelvin cooperage. The more you know. So the next one I stopped by was, and if you join me midstream, the St. Louis Bourbon Festival. And I've got to be honest, I've kind of secretly made fun of these guys. Every time we go to Kentucky, we drive right past the distillery, right off Interstate 64. And back in the day, well, suffice it to say, I never heard a kind word about these guys or the whiskey they were putting out. So I really just kind of skimmed or skipped over them. Turns out that's my bad. So I made a point, while it's free, to sample some of Jephthah Creed's offerings at the festival. Met a cool dude named Connor who poured me their red, white, and blue corn bottled in Bourbon Straight Bourbon whiskey. And then I did the thing, where you say, "Hey, do you have anything under the table or in the back?" And he was like, "Yes, sir, I do." And then he shared this fantastic 7-year wheated single barrel with me. It's 118 proof, and it was delightful. So I learned a couple more things, right? Got to applaud the good folks at Jephthah Creed. Turns out they're doing some amazing things. Next time, visit the in-laws. I think I'm actually going to make an effort to swing by and visit their distillery instead of making fun of them. And the other thing I learned is ask. Just ask. Honestly, for the longest time, and this is no joke, I'd been seeing stuff out there on Al Gore's amazing internet about Jephthah Creed. Terrible things, like describing it as having a musty or earthy flavor that overpowered the palate. I mean, lots of folks were saying their whiskey tasted young, lacked the oak depth, their smoothness, yada, yada, yada. And don't get me wrong, I don't always listen to lots of folks and what people say. But I was hearing that from damn near everybody. But this whole farm to glass shtick that they use at Jephthah Creed, they were one of the first to do that, really. And they're using that bloody butcher corn. But now I think they're coming into their own. And I got to give props to these cats. Jephthah Creed, you're on my radar now. And special thanks to Connor. He did an amazing job. I think he's their regional guy for the Illinois, Kentucky. I think he's the regional guy, brand rep for them. Anyway, needless to say, I'm kind of fired up about Jephthah Creed. And I live and learn, right? I made fun of him probably for 4 or 5 years. And now it's like, wow, that's impressive. So anyway, All right, I'm not going to list every single table I went to.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
But I am going to highlight just a few more, guys. I want to share this with you. Again, for those of you who couldn't or can't or will not go to one of these festivals, just trying to give a visual, trying to give you an idea of what they do there and what you can experience when they're there, and what the way I approach it, right? I approach it differently than others. So my perspective. And I'll mention, I did stop by and taste at Jefferson's and Four Roses. Oh, Four Roses. Okay, Four Roses, if you're listening, and I'm sure Brent Elliott, I'm sure he tunes into my podcast all the time, right? So Brent, my guy, y'all sent a couple gorgeous young ladies to serve Four Roses at the St. Louis Bourbon Festival. And while that's terrific, right? You need to step up the game, though. And what I mean is, beautiful ladies, boring whiskey, right? All they had, all I saw on the table was small batch select, small batch, and a generic single barrel selection. Guys, this one's one of the largest. These guys spend countless months putting this together every year. It is one of the largest bourbon festivals in the country. You got to do better than that. Now, maybe I missed something here. If they had something hidden away, or maybe it was, look, I apologize, but as big as you guys are at Four Roses, there should have been some standout, kick-ass whiskey front and center for this fantastic crowd of whiskey freaks at the festival. Just my humble opinion. I also stopped by the Jim Beam tent, and I sampled Old Overholt Rye. It was 114 proof and 4 years old. It was very nice. Nothing fascinating or exciting about it. It was just good. It was good rye. Also stopped by the 15 Stars table. I don't know if you guys have heard of 15 Stars. I'm not going to go into all their history and all that good stuff, but they had what they called an extra aged, and it was interesting. It was 2 8-year-olds and a 9-year-old whiskey blended together. And it comes in a fancy schmancy bottle from the Louisville Glass Company. So they're proud of the bottle. Okay, great. Sometimes that tells you something. It's contract distilled by Bardstown Bourbon Company, which they were upfront about. But when I tasted it, the only thing I walked away from was this dusty corn taste on the finish. So again, they had several to choose. This is the one I chose. Dusty corn on the finish. I was not a fan. Then these next cats from St. Louis, and they're actually in a pretty, they're in a pretty sketchy part of town that, if I remember correctly, my grandma actually spent time in as a child. I think she grew up there in Wellston, Missouri. It's basically just a part of the downtown St. Louis area. Anyway, I visited with a dude named Joe at Switchgrass. It was Switchgrass Distillery. And he shared an exceptional bottle with me. It was bottled in bond, 63% corn, 25% wheat, and 12% malted barley. And he blew me away with this Switchgrass single malt 132 proofer. And they just released it on the day of the event. It was fantastic. Was it hot? It was, but it didn't drink over 120 proof. So fantastic stuff. Switchgrass Distillery. I honestly, the name kind of turned me off. I kind of think of you like, I don't know, it gives me a bad idea when I think about switchgrass and distilling. And I don't know, just that's how my mind works. But after sampling some of their whiskey, and maybe it's not all great. Maybe these were just the ones that were fantastic. I was happy with them. They're in St. Louis, and I'd like to tour them and maybe get them on the pod sometime. Anyway, my next stop was our good friends at Hard Truth Distilling. There were these really tall chicks. They were standing in the way. I couldn't see around them. And the place was packed. I mean, like I said, very big turnout. Fantastic stuff. These gals had gone over to the bar and gotten some free mixed drinks. And they were like making a wall in front of Hard Truth. So I had to wait a good while. That's one thing I remember about. Crazy how my mind works. Anyway, they got the hell in my way. They finally got out the hell of my way. And this was in the upstairs tasting area in the Lemp Grand Hall. I think it was on the 3rd floor. And it was air conditioned, which was awesome because it was actually a pretty warm day for October 3rd. So I asked him at the table, like I said, if I could only taste one, what would they suggest? And they poured me Hard Truth's namesake whiskey. It's a sweet mash rye whiskey, 94% rye, barrel strength, uncut and unfiltered at 116 proof. And it was terrific. I think everybody, well, almost everybody brought their A game. And that leads me to J. Rieger whiskey out of Kansas City. Again, I made this list before the festival, and I'm heavy on the Missouri and the St. Louis stuff because that's where I live, right? Because, I mean, it could have gone to any other distillery. They were all there. I mean, everybody was represented, whether it was Buffalo Trace or everybody was there. I've had my fill of a lot of that stuff, and I wanted to try, while it's free, right? Also on a budget here. While it's free, I wanted to try some of this stuff. J. Rieger whiskey out of Kansas City. And they call it extra fine Kansas City whiskey. That's what it says on the bottle. And this was the only whiskey that I really didn't have anything nice to say about. And sorry, guys, maybe you've got some fantastic stuff there. I don't know. And again, I wasn't. Look, after all, this was, I think J. Rieger might have been either the last one or the second to last one that I visited. I didn't want to sample. They had 4, I think, there. But this is the one they told me I should sample, and it was no bueno. Anyway, I was disappointed by that. Like I said, Missouri, all that good stuff. I'll have to give them another chance sometime, maybe next year when they're in town. But I'm not going to make a trip out to their place. I'm not going to. Anyway, my opinion, just giving my opinion, and I'm just going to jump to the end here, and where I stopped by on the way out, I stopped by Buzzard's Roost. I stopped by their table, and they're out of Louisville. I want to give you a quick bit of history on them too. Buzzard's Roost, don't say that 3 times. It's Buzzard's Roost sipping whiskey, and they started back in 2019 when a gal named Judy Hollis Jones and Jason Bronner, they decided to get together and make bourbon that's what they call truly different. They use specially crafted barrels from independent stave, extra long seasoning, unique toast profiles, yada, yada, yada. And you can get Buzzard's Roost in, doggone it, I think you can only get it in 23 states, Alberta, Canada, and naturally in Louisville, Kentucky. Did the same thing here with these guys. I said, if I had one pour, if I only had time for one, and this was really my last pour of the night, which one would you share with me? This one they shared with me was a double-oaked straight bourbon whiskey, single barrel selection at 113 proof. The good folks at Buzzard's Roost, and this one again was delightful. So lots of good things to say about that particular whiskey. So that's some of the notable booths I visited with, and I think I already explained why I chose those in particular. Look, when you have hundreds of whiskeys to choose from and only a couple, because I only had 3 hours to do this in, right? So I'm not going to go nuts and regret the whole deal. I've done that before, and that is not good. So I chose carefully, and I've had plenty of the name brand or well-known stuff. So like I said, I leaned heavy on Missouri, but I think I got the general vibe of things, and I had a great time doing it. Plus, I got to share with y'all, so it's a win-win. Okay, and not to belabor this segment, I want to thank the good folks at the St. Louis Bourbon Society for putting on a stellar event and allowing me the opportunity, because it really was an opportunity to kind of ramble around and ramble through and check it out and report back to y'all. I did reach out to the guys at SLBS, and Drew, he's one of the cool cats at St. Louis Bourbon Society. He shot me a message because I wanted to get an idea of the impact, of the footprint, and the magnitude of this event. And this is what Drew told me. He said, we're very proud of what our team has accomplished over the past 5 years. This year we had around 1,800 folks attended over 4 city blocks at 125,000 square feet of festival space. Like I said, this was massive, guys. What an undertaking. They had over 600 different spirit samples available. 90 vendors participated, right? I think I got to 15 of them. There were 90 vendors there. They had 20 different cocktails that were served, 5 VIP lounges, 5 food trucks, and 2 cigar lounges. So they had a little bit of something for everybody. They say we are one of the largest bourbon festivals in the country and the largest in the Midwest. And get this, they raised over $10,000 for Code 3 response through ticket sales and their bourbon cooler raffle. So special shout out to Drew and again to the St. Louis Bourbon Society. Thanks, guys. I cannot wait for next year to see what they've got up their sleeves. And I may even see if Drew will swing by and jump on the pod at some point, maybe to talk about SLBS or what it takes to put on. And like I said, this was the 5th annual event. I want to know, what does it take to put together a festival like this one? All right, whiskey freaks. Let's get to the fun part now. My review. Today we're cracking open one that's been around a pretty long time. It's not fancy, it's not sexy, but it's cheapish and you can literally find it absolutely anywhere. Bulleit Straight Bourbon whiskey. Now remember, one of my goals here on the pod, I've got goals, I've got reasons, okay? I want to review stuff you can find. Well, you can find this everywhere, and you can actually afford it. This one checks both of those boxes. And like I said, I always have reasons. Another one is the sheer frequency with which bartenders are recommending and using Bulleit for pours, whether it be cocktails or neat. And we talked about this a few months back, I think it was anyway. I talked about news where Bulleit was a top choice of, it might have been the very top, of bartenders and best bars across the country. And other news outlets have reported the same thing here recently, actually. One news story from VinePair actually was saying, we asked 16 bartenders what's the best bourbon for beginners, and Bulleit was near the top of their list. Another article I found said that 5 bartenders were asked to name the best bourbon for an old fashioned. They all said the same thing. So Bulleit bourbon is a standout, especially for cocktails, and especially with bartenders across the country. It has the right price, strength, or proof point, and the great flavor profile necessary for a terrific old fashioned. So quick history bite. This is really quick, guys, because I want to get this episode, I want to get this thing in the can, right? Quick history bite here. Bulleit Bourbon is a Kentucky straight bourbon built on a 150-year-old family recipe. Augustus Bulleit, you know you're old when your name is Augustus, right? He dreamed this back up in the 1830s, and his great-great-grandson Tom Bulleit revived it in 1987. Now, the brand's owned by Diageo, the spirits giant that also owns Crown Royal, Johnny Walker, George Dickel, blah, 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 blah. I think they own Smirnoff and Guinness, too. Anyway, basically, if it's on a liquor store shelf somewhere at Diageo, probably touched it at some point. This is no exception. Now, the bourbon itself comes from distilleries Diageo doesn't own, which is incredibly strange for me to find out. But traditionally, Four Roses in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky is the distillate for Bulleit whiskey. And their headquarters for Bulleit is in Louisville. They handle the marketing and the recipe tweaks and the storytelling and all that good stuff. The actual whiskey is Four Roses distillate. And they have a new, this is new, it's newish. Their $115 million, 300-acre distillery is now in Shelbyville, Kentucky, and that opened in 2017. So you can take a tour there, you can see all the shiny equipment, and you can pretend you're doing important bourbon research. So the mash bill, 68 corn, 28% rye. It's an extremely high rye bourbon, and 4% malted barley. It's barrel aged somewhere between 5 and 8 years. That's the standard orange label we're talking about, guys, the 90 proof. And the proof point is 45% ABV, 90 proof. Like I said, the high rye content is in there, and it gives it, they say, a bolder, spicier characteristic. And God bless them, they talk about the water. The water comes from Kentucky limestone springs, and bless them, we talk about the water, don't we? They even talk about the water in Texas. And Ben Holiday, they talk about the water out in Missouri. Okay. It's no exception here at Bulleit. They're very proud of their water, even though it's not their water, it's Four Roses water. Anyway, so no more facts and figures, guys. Let's just taste this stuff. And today, I'm tasting with the Glencairn. And it's my shiny new favorite Glencairn, my St. Louis Bourbon Society Glencairn I got at the festival. Again, thank you to the organizers. Everybody loves free stuff. All right, let me pour this whiskey into my glass. And this bottle, you can't miss it, guys. Other than I think old Granddad. Bulleit is the other bourbon that has the obnoxiously bright orange label. They say you never use orange in advertising, but not at Bulleit. These guys, the label is a bright orange label, and you see it everywhere. I don't need to describe the bottle. I mean, obviously, it's on every bartender's shelf, right? I've already told you that. I'm not going to go into details about it, other than to say they want you to feel the whole frontier whiskey vibe, and that's the shtick. Frontier whiskey, and it says so right here on the bottle. Okay, I'm going to talk about the color. And we never, ever, never, we don't want to be naughty. We never, ever judge the color inside the bottle. And especially with a bright orange label on the front and back, we don't want to judge the color of this whiskey inside the bottle. You got to pour it into your glass to really evaluate it. I have done so. I have it in my glass, and I have superior lighting here down in the bunker. We could interrogate alongside the CIA down here. So good lighting. You know, I always say this, right? The color will sometimes give you an idea of the breadth of flavors you're about to put in your mouth. In my opinion, the darker the hue of the whiskey in your glass, the deeper the flavors are going to be. Now, that's not always true. Sometimes, all right, most of the time it is. So it's worth noting, and I will every single time. Now, this one pours color. We're going to use fancy words today. We're going to call it sunlit amber. Or if you want to get really visual, like light maple syrup. And I don't mean the good stuff. None of that log cabin magic or the Vermont maple syrup, which I got a story about Vermont coming up. It's more like that sugar-free kind of crap that tastes like sadness. And all right, don't get me wrong. I'm not calling the whiskey crap. I'm just saying that's the color. It's a light syrup. That's the closest I can get. All right, let me nose this thing. Smells like Teen Spirit. Yeah, no, it does not smell like Teen Spirit. God, I hate Nirvana. It is not time for a rant today, John. Not time for a rant. One day you're going to hear me go off on Nirvana, but today is not that day. Let me nose this. Oh, shit. Let me nose this. Okay, there is literally no alcohol on the nose. And I know, all you purists, I know, we don't have to argue, and Vlad will probably be pissed off, but I call it alcohol. It's ethanol. I know it's ethanol, guys, but ethanol is a specific type of alcohol. It's all the same thing. We know ethanol's in beer, ethanol's in wine, whiskey, other alcoholic. I know that. It's a broader chemical term. So I say tomato, you say tomato. And you're probably wondering, okay, you might not be wondering, I don't know, but you might be saying, Stark, that's me. Why do you always taste neat? Yeah, so that's just how I roll, guys. I believe in taking in the whiskey the way the master distiller intended it. No ice, no other schmutz, nothing but the whiskey, unadulterated and straight. I mean, you can always experiment with it. That's fine if you want to, but I'm always going to do it neat, and I'm going to go from there. I do not like watering down my pours with water or ice. But listen, whiskey freaks, you do you. And I really mean that. To me, it's like, okay, to me, it's like saying, hey, you know what would really make this Diet Coke taste spectacular? Let me add a bunch of water to it. Yeah, that just doesn't make sense to me. That's not happening for me when I taste whiskey. So you do you, I'm going to do me. It's all going to be good. Neat is the way of the walk, kids. Oh, shit. Before I go any further, don't forget to get out your tasting notebook. I try to mention this every single tasting. Probably very annoying to you guys, but you got to keep notes as to what you ate, what was going on, and then make notes about the whiskey you're tasting so you can refer back to it down the road. Now, any old notebook will do. I usually use my Heaven Hill notebook I got a couple years ago, but I've used those 25-cent notebooks you can find at Walmart too. I've got them laying all over the house. But what I do is I make my notes, then I update my Word document. That way I can easily search it and I can compare notes days or weeks or even years later. I mean, do what you want. I mean, I'm not your mom, but get a notebook. You'll thank me later.
Do it!
Okay, forgot to mention the legs. Let me do that real quick. The legs, they're thin. I wouldn't, gosh, I can't even, I can't give them a medium. They're just thin. There are almost no legs on this guy. So again, it's 5 to 8 years old. I would expect a little bit of legs. Yeah, not getting a lot. Shit, I didn't, back to the nose. Okay. I'm getting like a sweet vanilla. Definitely a little bit of oak in there. Not real oak heavy. It's a bit of citrus in here. Maybe like an orange zestiness. And maybe like light fruit. Like apple or pear. For something with high rye in it like this, I'm not really getting hit with anything that would say, hey, this is high rye. Let me get a sip. Okay, the rye is showing up here now. Not in a bad way. It's actually quite nice. But along with that rye, I'm getting like a brown sugar, that caramel. Let me get another sip. Yeah, that citrus note is in there. And if you guys listen to the pod, you know I don't like a lemony citrus. No. Or like a lemongrass or anything. I like an orange citrusy, like this orange zestiness we're getting here. Let me get another sip. Yeah, you know, I was getting that on the nose, that light fruit. Not really getting a heck of a lot of that here on the mid palate or the finish. It's really well balanced. I'm surprised, and there's a reason I'm surprised, and I'm going to tell you about it here in just a couple minutes. Let me get one more sip, guys. Okay, yeah. Like I said, it's got that caramel. That rye spice is really playing nicely with it. All the notes here, and there aren't a ton of them, right? This isn't a complex situation here. This isn't an 18-year-old anything. This is 5 to 8 years old, 90 proof. But the notes are playing well together. So what's my verdict? Well, I'll have the answer right after the money spot. Are you looking to update your bar or man cave with some great photographs or wall art? Head over to Etsy at famousdocs.etsy.com and pick up some fantastic prohibition, bourbon, whiskey, and gangster-related photographs and wall art. Okay, guys, you got to check this stuff out. They've got Al Capone, John Dillinger, Bonnie and Clyde, all kinds of cool stuff from Prohibition over there. And if you purchase 4 or more items at one time, you'll get 20% off your entire order. And that's for a limited time. Swing over to famousdocs.etsy.com. famousdocs.etsy.com. Now, you know, on the Blind Tasting Podcast, we have 3 verdict options. Are we going to keep it? Are we going to collect it? Or are we going to cull it? To keep it means to proudly display it in your liquor cabinet or bar. This stuff's good for a pour anytime, but there's really no need to stock up on it since it's always available. Collect it. Grab another bottle or maybe 2 bottles since you find it so damn delicious, or it just may not be easy to get your hands on. And lastly, cull it. Use it to loosen rusty bolts or sanitize a dirty toilet. In the case of Bulleit Straight Bourbon whiskey, I say, keep it. Yeah, why not? It's $27 all day, every day. Now, is it special? Nah, not really. Can you get better for this price? It's arguable. But if you want a high-rye whiskey for a cocktail, here you go. I mean, it's not going to impress anybody, really. It's not breaking news here, guys. This isn't going to bowl anybody over. But it's solid for what it is. It's got that gentle spiciness in here. It's got that sweet oak going on. Like I said, it's got that caramel. And I didn't mention this to you guys, but the finish is pretty dry. So I could see how that would work in an old fashioned. It's a rye heavy mash bill, but it isn't going to be overpowering for folks that aren't into rye whiskey. I think it's a great balance, actually. I didn't give you particularly, well, I wouldn't say descriptive because I did use descriptive words, but I didn't give you any crazy tasting notes because I didn't get any, right? Like I said, this is balanced. It's got just the right amount of sweetness, that little bit of brown sugar, the little bit of caramel. It's got that citrus zestiness in here. It's got the oak. It's got that rye spice. It's nothing fancy. But I took a look out there and I saw some of the craziest shit I'd ever seen people describe Bulleit 90 proof straight bourbon whiskey. Some guy says whipped cream on the back end. Now the mouthfeel, guys, it's a decent mouthfeel. It's mid. It's right down the middle, guys. It's not going to stick around all day, but it's not non-existent. It's right down the middle. Is it whipped cream? I don't know. Another guy says the finish has notes of overripe tangerine. Okay, I mean, all right, overripe tangerine. I could see tangerine as that citrusy note in here. Honestly, now that I'm saying the word tangerine, I could see that. Some other cat says it has a lingering sensation of carbonated water. Okay, not getting that. Somebody else says pastry with icing, like a Danish. I don't think it's got that much sweetness to it. It's good, but it's not a pastry. Some other dude says mint. I'm not getting any mint here, guys. I not even one shtickle, not one shtickle of mint here. Somebody else says honey that fancy honey people put into their eyes to clear infections. What the actual is that? Honey that you put in your eyes? Anybody ever hear that? I've never heard of that. So this is bizarre to me. Yeah, me? I get what I get. That's just me. Like I said, I'm not an expert, guys. But I am gonna be, listen, I bought this whiskey. Nobody gave it to me for free. Nobody bribed me. This is not tit for tat. And that's one of the differences this podcast has from other podcasts. I never, ever take whiskey for free. Ever. Not once. It's not going to happen. Because if I did that, you couldn't trust me, right? Am I an expert? Maybe not. Maybe. Who knows, right? Maybe one day. But you're always going to get the truth, right? Straight up. This is decent whiskey. $26.99. $26.99 for this. 90 proof. It's got some of the things that some people want, some of the things other people want. It's going to be mid, but it's going to satisfy a lot of folks. Now, I told you to grab a notebook before, and I made notes. And it turns out I tasted this very Bulleit offering back, and I can tell you exactly when, because I wrote it down, back on February 17th, 2023, because I was at the Stitzel-Weller Distillery in Louisville. And this was part of the tasting. Bulleit 90 proof with the orange label, the high-rye mash, 28% rye. I made notes in my notebook and I put it in my Word document. Let me get another drink. Hang on. Yeah. Okay. I didn't make a lot of notes because we were tasting pretty quickly. The notes I made on this in 2023, February, quite a while ago, my notes were almost no legs. And I said metallic on the tongue at first. I'm getting some caramel, spicy pepper, and the finish is somewhat of a dusty corn. Now, I only scored this thing a 2.5 out of 5. That's kind of how I did it back in the day. And that's how I do it when I score my personal tastings. But for the podcast, it's keep it, collect it, or cull it. Anyway, this is a keep it. And it's so funny because I gave it a 2.5 out of 5, which is right down the middle. And that's exactly where this bourbon should be. Now, I didn't get any metallic on the tongue today, but I may not have eaten the same type of food today that I had that day before that tasting. Anyway, that was a couple years ago too, right? So even though I'm sure they try to keep consistent there at Bulleit, everything isn't always 100% the same. So I really feel like we're right where we need to be with this whiskey. It's right down the middle. It's $26. I give it a 2.5 out of 5. It's going to be good in mixed drinks. And you could even sip this neat. You really could. So yeah, keep it. I mean, it's great to sip if you like. And like so many bartenders across the land have said, it should be great for a cocktail, an old fashioned or whatever. So before I go today, I want to mention, this is good, guys. Listen up. I've got a special episode coming up, and I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure it's going to be the very next episode. It probably will be, but I don't know. I've got a lot going on right now. I got a chance to visit with Kyle Lloyd, and he's the Vice President of Operations at Preservation Distillery in Bardstown. I had a great chat with him. We spoke for about 45 minutes, and I've got something very special that I want to share with you guys. And at least I hope it's special. I picked up a bottle here near the house. Like I said, I don't get shit for free. This stuff I pay for. This was not cheap. I picked up this bottle near the house, and it turns out it's from Preservation Distillery, but I couldn't find a lot of information about it. So that's when I reached out to Kyle, and lo and behold, he reached back out to me, and we spoke for, like I said, about 45 minutes. So I like to find out before I taste something. I want to get all my deets, right? That's what the cool kids say, deets. So I reached out to him. He reached out to me, had a great conversation. This dude, Kyle Lloyd, is a super enthusiastic guy at Preservation. He's super professional. Really just a fantastic guy. And I'm excited to share with all y'all what we talked about and a special tasting that's going to be involving something from Preservation Distillery. So hope it'll be amazing. I don't know. I haven't opened it yet, but I'm hoping it's amazing. Even if it's not amazing, we're going to talk about it. I'm going to give you the truth about it, right? Just because Kyle's a cool guy doesn't mean that the whiskey's going to be fantastic. But anyway, and I just got back from a whirlwind trip to the East Coast, Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island. And guess what? It turns out they've got bourbon and whiskey up there. And I got a special tasting I want to share with y'all from our good friends at Whistle Pig. This was crazy. It turns out we're driving through this little town in the middle of Vermont, and my wife says, "Hey, that's Whistle Pig." And I'm like, holy shit. We drove right past the Whistle. They only have I think 2 tasting rooms in America at this point. They're going to have one in Louisville soon, but they have one on Stowe Mountain, which we walked past actually a few days later, and they have one in Quechee, Vermont. We drove right past it, and I'm like, okay, we can't stop today, but can we please go maybe? My wife was like, sweet, we will go. Definitely, we'll check it out. So I stopped in, had a few pours, and I want to share with y'all what I tasted there. That'll be real soon. I made a lot of notes, but I obviously am traveling. I didn't bring a bunch of bottles home with me, but I did taste some of their more unique stuff. And honestly, I've not had a fantastic attitude about Whistle Pig. I have not been impressed. So I want to share the 3 things I tasted with you here in an episode upcoming. And you really might be surprised at what I have to say, and I'll just leave it at that. Well, like always, guys, last but not least, I got to give a shout out to the farmers, the distillery production guys and gals, the warehouse workers, the bottlers, and the truck drivers. They make it happen. So cheers to all of them. Well, that's all I got for today, Whiskey Freaks. Thanks for listening to the Blind Tasting Podcast, your #1 attitudinal bourbon destination.